Many people regard the beach as a fun-filled, beautiful space to be at one with nature, other than a relaxed atmosphere to spend holidays or have picnics. Very few are familiar with the other functions of the beach and the processes which contribute to beach formation or erosion on the beaches we enjoy today.
The beach is really a living organism. It moves and it changes with tides and currents and wave action, and all of this happens as part of a dynamic process that absorbs wave energy and protects the land behind it.
We spend so much time on the beach. It's just gorgeous in the sunshine, and we love seeing everyone out playing with their families and friends, and it's just the water's so clear. It's just a beautiful place to be. I mean, personally, I just think it's all the biodiversity that comes with these areas. It's just absolutely stunning. All the variety of fish, the coral, all the species that, feed off of each other up the food chain. It's a really complex way, that the ocean works, and I just think it's really beautiful and something that we should try to protect.
When it comes to the beach is actually, my definition would be pretty simple, just the barrier between the waves and the land. Sometimes it's made out of sand, sometimes it's made out of rock, but whatever it is, it's still a beach. It has a vital role to play in our ecosystem. It protects our land area, as well as creates a recreational area for our individuals to enjoy.
It is immeasurable. Certainly there have been an economic valuation of beaches. There have been economic valuation of coral reefs, the nearshore environment, and certainly it is in the millions.
A beach, in its layman's term, basically it's an area where you have accumulated deposits, though it may be sand, stones, shingles, and normally it needs to have a platform or a bedrock where water could actually go up and down back into the body of water. That is a beach, in terms of its form and morphology.
Throughout this process, smaller rocks and other particles dislodged down by the wind, water or ice are transported by rivers or seas and redeposited by wave action to form beach. The source of the same will also be a result of rock and coral erosion over years onto the coastline, leading to the formation of beaches. Wave action helps things along, and over time, rocks and pebbles are worn. The smaller and smoother the grains or pebbles, the longer or greater they have been subjected to wave action.
So the sea continually brings in these sediments, and at times it even takes them away, but it's very cyclic. It continues to happen where the sea would bring in some, take away some, and that's the main way most of our beaches are formed. In Saint Lucia, our tides are not very big as compared to other parts of the world, but tides are still important. At certain times of the day, you would find areas of the beach more exposed to the sun or more inundated with water or covered underwater. We have high tide and low tide, and during tides, that's when we see most of the sediments coming to the beach, staying on the beach, and as the tide goes out, it gets lower, those sediments will get packed behind and the tide goes out, so you have this flatter area.
The beach is made up of the following zones.
A beach is made up of 3 major zones. It's called the surf zone, the breaker zone, and the swash zone. Now the extent of a beach is not only viewed as from the high water line to the vegetation line. The extent of a beach starts from the surf zone. This is where the waves start to touch the bottom of the sand, which is the continental shelf, as far as where the sand, where you have your berms, and then you have your dunes in the background. So in the surf zone, you have where the waves, that is where you get the high activity of waves. The breaker zone is where the waves start touching the bottom, as I mentioned. And the swash zone is where the waves actually run up the sand or run up the... If it's a sandy beach, it will go up the sand. If it's a rocky beach, it will go up the stones. So those are the three areas of the beach. But a beach is not only the sandy area. The extent of a beach is, as I mentioned, from the surf zone to as far as the sand dunes and your vegetation line.
Both beaches and dunes undergo several seasonal changes at various points in the year. These changes demonstrate the dynamic nature of these systems.
Beach morphology is with evolution. You have coastal morphology and you have beach morphology. Coastal morphology, I must start if the parent, then go down to the children part of it. The coastal morphology is where the interaction of the land and the marine processes takes place. Now you need wave, you need tides, you need currents, as well as the sand to the background or the soil. Oh, that's where you may have stones or cliffs, and this is what would create the coastal morphology, which may give you beaches. And with beach morphology, this is where you get things like sandy beaches, stony beaches, shingle beaches, which also there is a need for wave energy. So the higher the wave energy, you would get the different formation of the beach. If you have high wave energy, you would get beaches which are very steep. If you have a low wave energy, you would have beaches which are very flat. And also this is dependent upon the seasons, winter and summer as well.
In the islands, beaches typically extend a certain distance into the sea, as well as around various parts. The beach zone often incorporates distinct features, such as sand banks, which are not necessarily part of the beach itself.
For a shoal to exist, the wave has to be 1.5 times the height of the bottom of the continental shelf. So in terms of, that's meters. So if the wave touches, you'll have a wave coming out from deep water, about say 2 meters, and you would see it approaching the shore. As soon as it touches the bottom, which is the wave depth, that's when the shoal takes place. So the wave breaks, and when it breaks, that is within the surf zone, and the energy of that wave is what causes the sand to come on. So as I mentioned earlier, the higher the wave energy, it would create sandbanks in different areas, right? As well as the movement of the currents, and it also depends on the tide. So at low tide, you would get high wave energy creating more sandbanks.
Beaches are a critical habitat for some migratory species. This is especially important as they overwinter in the Caribbean in search of food and mating. This is important for evolution.
We have crabs, we have turtles, because turtles lay on the beach, they lay in the sand, so sometimes there may be a turtle nest and people may not know, but turtles do come and lay. Birds are always on the beach.
Beaches also have immense value to the island's tourism product.
I think it's an essential component. Anybody purchasing a holiday in the Caribbean, the expectation is sand, sun and sea. So the two elements there of sand and sea are essentially what a beach is all about. So from our perspective, very challenging, although there are many hotels that run without a beach, that are more landlocked. But really, for the most part, the tourism industry is within the Caribbean is all about the beaches.
Religious and spiritual rites of passage have been on the rise in these parts.
One of our major activities that we undertake on the beach is baptism of our members. One of the reasons why that we chose the beach, because our rivers are no more. So therefore, it has us to resort to the beach.
On the beach, you may even stumble upon a wedding or two. Though beachside business is booming, there are limitations to the type and extent of developments allowed on the beachfront.
We need to take that into consideration into our future planning, and a recent report released by the UN is suggesting that abandon and retreat will have to become part of our planning framework in the future, because sea level will rise, there will be coastal erosion, and with related consequences for infrastructure and other development that's close to the coast.
Have you ever wondered if there were no beaches in Saint Lucia, or if our beaches were so degraded that it was no longer possible to use them for our enjoyment? We must take great care and learn all we can to preserve them for generations to come. Island life, heaven. Those in love with the sounds of the surf know it best. A typical Sunday afternoon finds most St. Lucian families heading to the beach. It is such an enshrined cultural habit that many take it for granted. But the beach is one of the few recreational spaces these islands have. It is natural and it is free. Quite literally, the poor man's adventure theme park. With the financial stresses of tropical life, beaches provide a therapeutic and reinvigorating escape for rich and poor, young and old alike.
I personally use the beach as a way of meditation. I come, I sit on the beach, I listen to the wave, it calms you down. I find it to be therapy of the mind for me personally.
The beaches and coastal area around St. Lucia is considered extremely valuable, particularly from an ecological perspective, because a number of beaches around the island are considered or provides an area of nesting for sea turtles. It's also an area of habitat for crabs. It also provides an area of recreation for locals and visitors alike. And certainly it acts as a buffer or a median between the marine environment and the terrestrial environment.
A beach in itself is important. It is important that we maintain the beach, we maintain the vegetation, avoid development along the coast, because as I indicated, this has a direct impact to our coral reefs and our seagrass beds, mangroves as well.
Not only do St. Lucians delight in the use of the beaches, but many visitors flock to the island to experience these natural spas. In fact, St. Lucia's economy now depends heavily on the hospitality industry, and sun-drenched beaches are the preeminent selling point for the island, as with many other islands.
So as an island nation, beaches are vital to St. Lucians. We enjoy them for recreation. We see them as areas that are all around. They are also good just for aesthetics. They look good. Tourists come here to enjoy them. But St. Lucians on average spend time just at the beach, not necessarily in the water, but sometimes you'll find vehicles parked along a busy beach, especially in the urban centers, Castries, Grosley, where you just see people sitting in their vehicles having lunch, for example. So beaches to us have values far beyond just being a place where we recreate, but it's also a place of solace, a place of quiet time to think, to reflect.
Taxi drivers, beach chair rentals, and this underwater business all depend on the natural attraction between visitors and the sea.
You find that having the beach available for the clients, especially when they're before diving or after diving, they can lay down on it and get some sunshine and stuff. So that is vitally important for me as a dive operator. And also, if those who have their family who are not diving, they can rest out and chill on the beach and snorkel as well.
But the beaches and the sea are not only for relaxation, rejuvenation, and entertainment. They also provide the livelihood for these local fishermen.
Some of the benefits, for example, to St. owners, you could cast your net. Because of the sandy beach, you would be able to pull it on shore to hold the fish in it. If there's a lot of rock, then you would be able to do that. So the beach is very important.
Ouais, on mange en l'œil, on a tout à fait mon l'œil, on dans le. C'est important. Avant de retrouver le bassin dans la rivière, quand nous croiser, la petite baie, il va péter encore. Quand on sable, il va y moins présent.
When the sea is rough, a lot of sun is coming up to the beach because we can't push our boat on the rocks, you know, because we love the sun. Because each time we push the boat on the beach and it have the rock, watch, just have a look. We have to fix up the boat.
Beach est important pour un fisherman. Moi, lever, sometimes c'est dans l'allée. C'est ça qu'on a fait pour l'événement. Moi, nous sommes en belle beach là, nous sommes pas pour être cochonné à l'œil, nous sommes pour nettoyer, pas faire cochonner à l'œil. C'est là que nous avons fait cochonner à l'œil. Exactement pour ça.
This would be a fishing priority, and that would be greatly used for the livelihoods of the fisher folk coming into that area, catching all types of fish, more specifically jackfish, depending on the main area in terms of the depth of the waters in that particular area. So the main benefit of that beach area would be for a fisherman.
Coastline is where the sea meets the land. Do you see that, everybody?
Lessons in classrooms around the world prioritize the protection, preservation, and enhancement of coastlines. The duty falls on young and old to ensure sands and seas are left for future generations to enjoy.
How many Christians love going to the beach? The wind. Haven't you ever been on the shore and sometimes the sun comes into your eyes sometimes?
Yes.
Is somebody blowing the sun in your eye?
No.
What is causing that sun to blow all on your face and your hair?
The wind.
The wind, natural forces. In our social studies lesson, we teach our children how to appreciate our beaches. We teach them that the beach is our natural resource. It is something that is given to us. So as a result, the students, they have to take care of our beaches. Now you must be saying, and they always ask, why them? But the beach is for all of us to use. So we have to teach them, one, that they have to take care of it. They have to keep it litter-free. And there's one thing they always speak about is that they see a lot of garbage on our beaches. So we teach them how to take care of it. What can they do? We don't tell them what to do. They also give us ideas as to what they can do in order to protect our beaches, in order to preserve the beaches, or else, if not, the next generation will not get that beautiful beach to play on, to relax on, to bathe and so on.
One of the major problems stems from getting students to take what they learn from the classroom into real life, where they don't always see the older ones making educated choices when it comes to preserving our coast.
This is a grade 3 class. They're 8, 9-year-olds. So we're actually starting very young with them. We want them to understand that, hey, the beaches are here for our enjoyment. So if we start early with them, this is going to be in them. We want to inculcate that knowledge in the students that I can do something to preserve the beach. And in addition to that, they themselves now will grow with that in them. And of course, our future is going to look much brighter if we start with the younger generation.
For everything from pleasure fishing and recreation to sustainable development, the benefits of the beach are endless. The future of the beaches in this part of the world, however, remain in the hands of the people. human development, both planned and unplanned, have been accelerating the rate of coastal degradation, erosion and beach loss. Clouds bring rain, and rain erodes. A look at many of Saint Lucia's beaches will find varying degrees of coastal erosion, a gradual process where waves, tides or currents smash against the shore, displacing rocks and sediments.
One of the greatest impacts of beaches would be erosion, as I mentioned. But bearing in mind, while we may want to introduce hard structures engineering, which is called coastal engineering, they also have some detrimental impacts as well. Most of the times when you put structures which are perpendicular to the beach, you tend to get some parts of the beach, you get accretion in one area, and in the lee or to the back of the structure, you get erosion. While it may be important to protect our beaches from erosion by trying to trap as much sediment as we can, those structures in itself do have impacts on the beach.
Many islands in the Caribbean are in the path of the Atlantic hurricane belt as they travel west. Their relative small size, dense coastal settlements, vulnerable economies, low human capacity predispose them to impact and severe coastal erosion from wave action, rivers, and other forms of land runoff. This hurricane-prone region includes the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico. Islands along this chain, including Saint Lucia, are hit by storms and hurricanes annually, increasing the risk of coastal erosion.
If you think of hurricanes or tropical storms, with reference to Saint Lucia, what would immediately come to mind would be destructive storms such as Hurricane Allen in 1980 and also Hurricane Thomas in 2010. These were very destructive and this caused a lot of damage. They claim lives, they claim property, and they claim livelihoods. Both of these systems, they also did a lot of destruction on the beaches.
High winds, rains, and storm surges have been devastating to Saint Lucia during the hurricane season. Hurricanes like Thomas in 2010 and more recently Irma in 2017 left a trail of destruction. Weather experts pointed the finger to global warming and overall climate change for the level of damage sustained by many islands. Land slippage caused by ongoing coastal degradation was seen in many cases.
Erosion is one of the major ills of any beach, and erosion is mainly caused by the movement of sand, and it normally happens with longshore drift. Longshore drift is when the current moves in a particular direction, and most times we tend to we try to get remedies for coastal erosion, which is the major concern.
Mitigating the effects of climate change is top priority, locally and internationally. Just as important is the task of sensitizing locals to means of protecting the beach.
If you continue to remove sand on the beach, if the restaurants are discharging their waste into the beach area, land-based pollution, all this affects the beach. So we need to try and reverse this action and make sure we use the beach in the right way.
Beaches are starting to get a bit overused, and there are some negative consequences involved in the overuses of beach. So I think at this moment we need to take a step back from every beach is free and open to use, which of course it is by virtue of Queen's Chain. There's not an argument as it relates to access, but we need to have more information and be more responsible as users of the beach so that the beaches can endure and the ecosystems that the beaches protect can be sustained and enhanced. Currently we're facing a situation throughout St. Lucia, in fact the Caribbean, consequences of climate change and sea level rise where beaches are being degraded, and the human interactions with the beaches and the nearshore environment is accelerating this degradation.
We littering the waterways more, we seen all the things. You know, right now, all the inside there, if you go inside there now, endless rocks and the stones, you know, you're walking on. You have to be careful. That wasn't so. We used to have a sand, especially around now time, you know, the water used to be pristine, clear and so on. Around now time where they call Kawem. And you could see the bottom. Yeah. Now, best stones underneath there, so which means they definitely, it are signs, there's evidence that it losing the sand, you know, being lost.
In 2015, Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Jamaica and Saint Lucia launched a campaign to save the beaches. This project aimed at building resilience to ensure the islands continued to benefit from natural assets along the coastline.
There are a number of things we could do, and it comes mainly from the overarching view that one needs to respect the resource and respect other users of the resource and use it in a way that will not impact negatively on either.
Climatic disturbances are not the only worries. Local beaches are far from immune to crime. On Granans Beach in St. Lucia, sand miners and turtle poachers keep police busy. Forestry and Crown Lands personnel deal with the recurring problems which have resulted in the death of many nesting turtles and their babies.
We have, particularly in the Grandans area, where we have the beach and mangrove in Grandans, declared marine reserves. Again, because, as I mentioned earlier, of the ecological importance, because it is the most important or largest nesting site for the leatherback sea turtle. But you also get the other sea turtles, such as the hawksbill and the greens, coming to nest on the beach in Grandans.
Granans is a popular turtle watching location. Tourists from all over the world flock to witness nature at its purest during the nesting season. Sand is often trucked away and sold for construction and other purposes. Locals are discouraged by authorities from supporting the illegal venture, which contributes to the erosion of the beach. Beaches, after all, are as much for recreation as they are a natural protector of the shoreline.
During the last hurricane, we saw some damages to those beaches. Shock Beach, Fiji Beach, Labri Beach, because some of those beaches are actually, the people pegs where they land begin, are actually in the sea now because of high sea level rise and beach erosion.
Pollution is a problem. Even with spontaneous cleanup initiatives organized by locals, the debris builds up day after day. Plastic pollution is another topical issue today. Some consideration is also needed for non-solid waste pollution as well. Granans Beach suffers both natural and synthetic waste. There is also evidence of notable amounts of sheep waste.
Marine litter, plastic, has a direct impact on our beach, on our coastal and ecosystems, and it's something that we really need to be concerned about.
Grandans is a typical area. It is, a very dynamic beach. It is, the storm surge there, or the wave activity rather, there is pretty high, and certainly it is known to produce, not through its own fault, it is because of our own activities, human activities, it is basically producing or spitting out quite a bit of waste that comes from the sea.
Other local beaches face similar challenges. In canneries and ancillary, runoff from local farms makes its way into rivers and onto beaches. Indiscriminate dumping of liquid and solid waste is a mounting problem.
We have a challenge with solid waste. Within St. Lucia, you'll commonly see, and it's tragic within the oceans, a lot of plastic, a lot of bottles, especially food containers. We have to evolve our culture We have to understand our responsibility towards litter and the impacts that that makes not only to what's visible on land, but what becomes invisible within the sea. I think, and it's tragic again to say that the sea has become a typical dumping ground because you can chuck your waste in there and it disappears. But nevertheless, we know that the impacts of the growing plastics within the marine environment, even so much as coming down to affecting the food chain, is something that we need to address and we need to correct.
Runoff from land can negatively affect beaches, often carrying sediment. Poorly managed farms are as much to blame as inadequately managed developments.
Every time we get a flood and there is excessive runoff from the land, and you could see it because as the water from the rivers go out, you could see the browning stretching out. As that gets back to your beaches, the tourism product that we are offering is also compromised. But not just the tourism product, your coral reef is a major part of our tourism industry. So when you go down to Anne-Chassenay and Ascochon, if we treat what's happening in the inland really badly, then a person has no need to come in and try to go snorkeling and enjoy all the beauties of snorkeling. There is a direct correlation between the livelihood of fishermen, the tourism product in terms of the impact on the beaches, and also on the coral reef that we need to be mindful of, because if we don't have our tourism running high, it represents a market for the farmer.
Valuing beaches and marine life means more than learning about open and closed seasons for protecting species or picking up litter. It is ensuring we do all in our power to maintain a healthy ecological and developmental balance in order to preserve our beaches for years to come. What would the Caribbean be without mesmerizing beaches which lure tourists from all over the world for the sun, sea, and sand experience? Everything about islands like Saint Lucia revolve around its coastlines, and without the beaches, the islands just would not be as appealing. How then to preserve and protect them? The first step, appreciating their value. As much as they serve as income-generating zones for recreation, beaches are homes and habitats for wildlife and protectors of our coastlines. We must keep them clean.
Making the community aware that, our rivers need to be kept clean. The kids use it to bathe, to go to school. While we were cleaning, we came across a lot of pampers, defecation, a lot of garbage. Really is an indication to us that we're not keeping the community clean and creating a very unhealthy environment. The beachfront, we've been having this issue for a number of years. But even as the kids were walking around the village, they were protesting against people defecating and littering. I'm hoping that this action today, this form of volunteerism, can actually really impact people in the community and get them towards creating a sustainable community.
We wanted to clean up a beach. There's a lot of things going on social media as well right now. So we thought, why not us? Why don't we do something as well? And it's an important thing. I mean, we sail the ocean. We bring tourist visitors here to all of these islands. So why not make sure it gets a little bit cleaner as we leave it?
Keeping garbage off our beaches and out of our seas and oceans is paramount, as is respecting all organisms which call these waters home.
There are some resorts on island who manage their wastewater in exemplary ways. Examples would be Tikai Resort, Anne-Chassenay and Jade Mountain Resort. And both of those facilities have invested in a reed bed system which actually replicates what nature does and creates what is called a man-made wetlands. And the wastewater interacts with various aggregates and aquaculture in order to purify, or in wastewater terms, create polished effluent.
A still present problem stems from inadequate sewage systems. In some areas, improperly managed wastewater makes its way into rivers and seas. To combat this, the Water and Sewage Company of Saint Lucia has been pushing for the implementation of proper septic tanks or sewage systems for all.
Places where we don't have the network, we have people using communal septic tanks and septic tanks. Now you find that some places there are poor practices, meaning that the septic tanks are not well designed when it comes to the soak-away aspect. You find the sewer end up in drains, then into the rivers, then into the sea, and that's untreated sewer. It causes pollution for the marine life. We at WASCO trying to bring across now is that we want people, contractors, homeowners, business owners, to come around with some better practices when it comes to disposing of wastewater. We want this wastewater to be treated where it can satisfy the standards to be released into the environment.
Farmers too have an important role to play. They can be vigilant in protecting beaches by adhering to principles of organic farming or agriculture, which include the principles of ecology and health.
We run a program which encompasses a ridge-to-reef concept, that is, looking at all the activities in particular watershed that's in Soufriere area, right through the communities down onto the nearshore coastal waters. So it encompasses a number of different groups, a number of different organizations which are all involved in some way or another in the management of the watershed. So over the last couple of years that we have engaged the different groups in the Soufriere area, we have undertaken a number of initiatives and programs in the watershed, such as dealing with farmers, promoting best practice in agriculture, slope stabilization, reforestation programs, and all of these are geared towards reducing soil loss, reducing chemical runoffs in the water courses, which obviously will end up in the nearshore coastal environments. And these are, in fact, in Saint Lucia, some of the initiatives that we have had, working to reduce chemical inputs, encourage more organic production systems, and developing the capabilities of these different groups to really practice best management practices for conservation of the biological and ecological resources in the watershed.
Rivers too must be kept clean, especially those feeding into seas and oceans. As riverbanks are very easily eroded, buffers are a must, positioned between the riverbanks and the farming zone.
There is a standard, there is a regulation, and it's called a river buffer. I think it's somewhere about 50 feet from along the edge of the river that is not to be cultivated. That is not being adhered to in a number of instances. However, recent experience shows that in areas where those buffers are respected, either through the remaining of mango trees, particularly the indigenous ones, mango long, mango palui, and so on, we have seen in events like Thomas, the December 2013 trough, these areas, the integrity of the banks were protected. But not only the integrity of the bank is protected, these trees along the banks create silt traps that reduce the amount of sediment that gets into the waterway and eventually to the coast. So it is very, very important that those of us who cultivate, farmers who cultivate, that we respect these buffers, not only to protect the waterways, but also to protect our investment. Because in as much as shoreline erosion is disastrous, when that riverbank begins to erode, the farmer's holding also becomes vulnerable.
The Coastal Management Unit stresses the importance of ensuring beaches are not overdeveloped. Even the quest to build the island's tourism profile must be done in moderation to avoid dangerously depleting vegetative cover, which is an important aspect of protecting beaches from being eroded.
The beach, as we know it, it's an important ecosystem, and you have a lot of development or a lot of coastal development. And that in itself is a concern because, of course, if you have development, you have removal of vegetation, you have marine pollution, especially because of a lot of human activity along the coast, and that in itself can impact the beach. It is important to note, though, that practices such as properly disposing of garbage could eliminate that factor of the human activity.
At the marine level, we have started a very big coral restoration program with Clear Caribbean and with the Sandals Foundation, and will involve coral outplanting so as to improve the biodiversity of the nearshore coastal waters as a ecosystem-based management adaptation to climate change. That has several components, part of which will involve training. And as you know, coral restoration, which is a very soft practice in response to climate change, will help in mitigating a number of aspects.
It's almost like you go and you plant trees or you plant plants to reduce erosion of the hillside. And what we're doing is actually providing an opportunity for coral to grow and to return or enhance the ecosystem services, or one of the ecosystem services that the coral reef provided to the island.
If the coral reef wasn't there, would be able to ride up onto the beach and collide with the land, cause erosion, and in extreme conditions wash extremely into land. That wouldn't happen if you had a vibrant reef system, because the energy of the waves is caught within that reef and diffused before it impacts the land.
Change can only start from the bottom, and one person can have tremendous impact on their community.
There is quite a lot of work to do. I think we have to do some greater education of the citizenry. We have to do some greater education of the resource users, fisher folk, the tourism sector, the farmers. There is still quite a bit of work to do.
If you don't know, you could find out information on the designs of these items, of these structures. Find out information, find out what it should look like, what's the capacity, what the effluent should be, what's the standards for the effluent. And before you go and you just design or you build something, you just presume from old practices, you could go and find out some information when doing these structures.
If there were no humans, beaches will exist, they will come and they will go, depending on the forces of nature. But once we begin to use them, we've got to do that in a way that will ensure firstly the integrity of the beach is maintained, and that other users can enjoy the beach as well.
It is important that we understand what the farmers are doing and how what happens on land impacts the sea, and our direct human activities that are affecting that as well.
Your land is yours. You don't want it to be washed away by rains, landslides, or perhaps even in the dry season through wind action. And so do all to protect it. This is your livelihood. This is your capital investment.
There is a proper management system within the SMMA, within the near coastal area. But all of that, as I said earlier, would add up to zero because of the actual activities that happen inland. And in the wisdom of GIZ, in the CATS program, we need to make or develop the synergies between the ridge and the reef. Best practices is to have good agricultural practices. Maybe use more hydroponics, less fertilizers. So your practices within the hinterland must be right so that we can continue maintaining what we have within the marine life.
With a deadline of 2015, ensuring environmental stability was one of 8 Millennium Development Goals adopted by the United Nations. The final report saw improvement in a number of areas, but there is still work to be done to shift the world back onto a more sustainable path.